You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And today I'm joined by Mercury IT, and we're talking about all things cybersecurity and possibly a little bit more. This is such an important area, and it's an area where I have been really the worst kind of person. Oh, I'll use the same password for everything, and all the team members can have the one password to access all the things at the dental practice. What the harm can happen from all of that? And Steph Burrell, who is sales manager for Mercury IT, and Chris Haigh, who is Chief Information Security Officer, are both here to tell me otherwise, that I do need to be far more conscious of security. So welcome to you both. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And Steph, how did we first connect? Was it through LinkedIn or something?
It was just the beauty of networking. I think we got introduced by a mutual connection on LinkedIn and had a great catch up and hit it off. And the rest is history.
Yeah, that's right. And when we were deciding, is there an episode for the podcast within this conversation, when I shared with you how I normally manage security in a dental practice and their computers, you said, yes, there's definitely an episode in this. So first of all, I'll throw over to you first of all, Chris. Tell us a little bit about Mercury IT and the sort of services that you offer to dental practices and beyond.
Yeah, sure. So Mercury's been around for 14, 15 years or so, born out of the Gold Coast, but we're national. And we kind of happen to find ourselves looking after mostly dental clients, actually. So that wasn't by some design. It's just how it ended up. And I think what happens is it's just word of mouth. So we've looked after and do look after a lot of dental practices. That does give us an advantage, and of course, dental practices an advantage is where we actually understand what you're using, how it's running, and what problems that you'd normally run into. Whether it's Dental for Windows or Exact, or it's your imaging, your cone beam that's a problem, or your high caps is not working. Yeah. So we're kind of across all those things that are used in a dental practice. And then, like you were saying earlier about the passwords, we're also well aware of the, shall we say, I'll just say lack of security awareness, let's say, across every dental practice I've been into, unfortunately. However, having said that, just from a services perspective, Mercury is mostly a managed service provider. So we basically, all IT is outsourced to us, and we manage all of it end to end. So from a cybersecurity perspective, we kind of saw a need that we'd need more focus on cybersecurity for all our clients, probably about 3 years ago. So we split off a cybersecurity dedicated department. So that's the department I look after with my team. But obviously we're still interlaced with the rest of our operations team because the other work needs to happen as well. So there's two kind of sets of services. It's that broad IT service, so we can just look after everything end to end. And then we've also got a little bit more mature cybersecurity specific service. So that could be things around our security operations center, looking for active breaches all the time. But that's generally not what goes in place for a dental practice. From a dental practice perspective, we like to kind of focus more on the basics. And what I mean by that is where there's legislation involved, like having a notifiable data breach documented plan, so an incident response plan. I'll work mostly with the principals on getting that documented and put in place as a policy, because that is something that you need to do from a legal perspective.
And this is a thing. Steph mentioned, what do you call it, a database, what plan?
It's a notifiable data breach response plan. is what you would need. So this comes under your privacy principles from your 1988 privacy laws. So there was an extension to that law, which they added the notifiable data breach scheme. That got added in February 2018. So since then, you should have this documented and have a plan.
Yeah, I had no idea whatsoever. And Steph, were you going to say something then?
Oh, I was just going to say, you and most people I speak with who still don't know that that's in place, and it's been in place since 2018. So you're not alone.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring both of your minds to the management that I've had over security, and you can tell me why that's a problem. And so everyone out there is in the headspace, I'm going to list first through the areas where there could be passwords put in place, but some practices, just through efficiency, we just want to get things done and not have interruptions to the starting our day, where there may not be passwords. So first of all, we're talking about dental practice management software. There's both cloud-based ones and not cloud-based ones. I don't know what the alternative version is. There's emailing.
Yep.
On-premises, beautiful. On-premises. And there's email. There are social media accounts. There's also the specialists that we use via the email, and sometimes they send us to another portal to download images and x-rays and things like that. Now, more and more, we are also in communication with laboratories and sending scans of people's mouths to laboratories as well. And as I say, back in the day, we just wanted it to be nice and efficient. And we could afford to do that, in a sense, when I was younger, because we didn't have the internet back when I was younger. So everything that started to come on board, we went from cards with patient files to having it all digitized and then up in the cloud. We had direct mail. Now we have email. And so I'm from that era where it's taken me a lot of convincing as to what is possible out there on the internet to scam all the details. But younger people are far more aware about it. So what's happening right now in terms of how easy we can make it for people to scam us and to create profiles using our information if we don't have it password protected enough?
I think you've covered a lot in what you've just said, and to sort of try and break that we are more connected than ever. We're more connected than we've ever been before. So I guess, which is amazing. It's helped improve the way we can communicate, how we can do business. We can do things much more efficiently. It's been incredible. It's opened up this whole new world of doing business. Unfortunately, it's also made us a lot more vulnerable. There's a lot out there, and there is a lot of opportunity for criminals to capture that data, create different profiles and things like that. Particularly when it comes to dentists. So I had a lot of conversations with dentists recently, particularly at some of the conferences we've been at, Julie. And they said, but I'm just a dentist. Why is anyone interested in my data? Like, who cares how many root canals that patient had? It's like, well, because I think they think, oh, big business, they've got to worry. So people think someone maybe like McDonald's or something like that. McDonald's is a quick transaction. You go in, you tap your credit card, you pay, you leave. They're not holding any personal data, so personal identifiable data. Whereas anyone in the medical industry, anyone in dental, they've got all of that data stored. So they've got first name, last name, email. They might have Medicare number. They might have private health information. So all that information can help build a profile. So people like dentists are actually much more of a target than those bigger companies, because they've got more data that is more valuable that can then unfortunately be used in a criminal act. So it is more important than ever that particularly people holding that sort of data is more aware. And I guess it can sound daunting and overwhelming in terms of managing it when you look at maybe how we used to do things, but you can do it really easily and effectively. And it can actually make your life a lot quicker when you're managing it properly as well, rather than trying to have all these disjointed systems and 5,000 different email addresses and passwords.
Yeah, it's quite right. That is the main thing, like you just said. There's the data that gets used. And I'll draw a little bit of more of a context here so people can understand what we're talking about. Look, the biggest issues that we have in the cybersecurity, so where most of these breaches happen, where you read about these big breaches and things happening, they happen through something called phishing. So phishing is an email that's sent to you that's pretending to be someone or some business that it's not. So this is the criminal gang, this criminal organization that's now targeting not just you, because again, people go, well, why are they after me? It's not about that. It's quite often it's a scattergun approach, but that scattergun approach is becoming less effective. So how do I make it more effective? I use pretexting. So pretexting is the story I build as a criminal to come off more believable to you. So you go, well, why should anyone care that the person had 4 root canals? Because when I send the email as the criminal and I can reference that you've had 4, or your last one was back in May, so blah, 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 you're immediately now trusting that email because they have information they shouldn't have. Right? And that's how it's used, unfortunately. And then just coming down to shortcuts and like, oh, we just want to do our work efficiently. Absolutely. However, the problem is the shortcuts are now going to bite you in the ass. That is unfortunately what's going to happen. There is no shortcuts. Shortcuts is going to lead to a security issue. So where in the past you would have your DAs sign in onto the computer, which is the doctor's login, right? And then the immediate question there is going, okay, so what happens if you've got an insider threat, which is also a hot topic in dentistry. So it's like, well, what if the DA does a prescription in your name? Could you lose your dental license? So there's real concerns around the dentist and the principals, right? As well as your customer data that could get out there as well because this password's not being kept safe, right? Like we've all seen it. We've seen the post-it notes, on the screen or taped under the keyboard. We've all seen them, right? So
we're a sophisticated bunch.
Yeah, and look, it's again, just to put it out there, it's not just dentistry. I've seen this everywhere. And unfortunately, it is the health industry that seems to be the worst. I don't know why. But dentistry and the private clinics, GPs, absolutely terrible. Well, I said it's exactly the same. Like they'll pull out.
No, you can say that they're worse. It makes me feel far better. They're worse. Those damn GPs.
The ECG machine comes out and it's got a little sticker on which has got the password. And you're like, right. Maybe like, is that machine connected to the whole client database? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Great.
Don't see any problems so far. Let's keep searching. And it's just such an interesting space because, there is that education gap with dummies like myself that didn't grow up with all the internet computers and all the rest of it. It feels like the knowledge gap is so broad. A long time ago, I ceased to try to understand how it all worked. I still think there's pixies and that there's magic spells and all the things that allow me to do the things that I do, but that's as far as my understanding goes. And so I think this is it. We're number one, we're not aware of what we're trying to protect. We're not so much trying to protect the patient's privacy in terms of what's happened to them in the dental surgery, in terms of treatment. What we're trying to make sure of is actually stopping their details being utilised by an external bad agenda group of people to be able to scam people, create profiles around people, etc. And so when we look at that, we think, oh, I've got virus protection. That's enough, isn't it? But the scammers of the world with all the phishing and the Telstra, you got to pay your Telstra bill through. What was it? What was the scam a friend of mine was scammed on that's right. It was a tax department that now they're taking, Apple Music cards as payment.
Yeah.
I look back and I go, come on, you didn't fall for that, did you? And she said, it looks so real.
Yeah.
But it's getting far more sophisticated where all of a sudden we are allowing access to all of the information that somebody needs in order to adopt a profile, create a profile that then can tap into your bank account or lend money on your behalf or use it for their own devices and any other number of things, criminal activities under the sun, yeah?
Absolutely. Just to chip in a little bit on that as well, where you talk about protecting your customers' data and protecting their privacy. You don't have to look at it that way. You can look at this from a purely selfish model, and maybe that's a better way of doing it, right? You are protecting your dental practice's reputation. That is your goal as a business person, and making money and being like, I don't really care about their data. It's not my data. I'm not being scammed. It's about your reputation, though, because if your customers are scammed, they turn around and make a complaint, or make a complaint to the Privacy Commission, anything like that, your reputation is going to tank, and you don't want that. So you can look at it both ways. I'm protecting my data, customers' data, and I'm doing the right thing. Or you can have the other alternative view of going, I don't want to get out of business.
And I tell you what, let's go even further selfish in this space, because whatever it takes to get people to listen to the details of how to make themselves more secure is a good thing. But there are fines involved sometimes, and quite hefty ones as well. Steph, talk to more about the fines that you've seen rolled out in the past.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, it's like we were talking about before with the data breach that came out in 2018. Again, people don't even know that you can be fined for not doing these things correctly. And every business does have things that they need to follow to meet the different requirements for that particular industry and what they do. And it does really vary depending on the data you store and everything else, because obviously depending on how much information can be captured. But these fines are huge. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, is it like 250,000 or something per user? Is that correct?
There's two parts to it, and it's actually been extended very recently. So I'll give you the updates on that one as well. So firstly, under your notifiable data breach scheme, if you've not done the right thing, they can fine the business $2.2 million. They can also then go after the directors themselves up to $420,000 per director. So that's the first thing. Now, what I will say is none of these funds have been handed out yet, not once. So unfortunately, I think the legislation, the way it was written up, kind of just lacked teeth, let's say. However, after the Medibank, Optus, Dell, Latitude, etc., all these were just kind of known as the big three now, I think, in Australia. What they have done is they've turned around and they've updated this, and they've given way more powers to the Information Commissioner. And those funds are now closer to what we see in Europe's laws. So they've got their GDPR laws, which is their privacy laws, and it's kind of starting to mimic that, to the point that they can fine a business $50 million or a percentage of the turnover, whichever is highest. So,
that's amazing.
So that's 50 million and up then. So, which will it'll just put a business out of business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So just because they didn't listen to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success podcast. Well, it's quite extraordinary. First of all, I've just written a question here to make sure I do get this information, so I might as well ask it now. But is there a website that dental practices can go to actually find out the laws that pertain to their management of data? Or do we just contact you guys?
I wish there was a simple checklist, and there are, I guess, basics, but every business is different, and what they do is different, and how they store their data and lots of different things. So to be able to do it right, it is best to seek the help of experts to make sure that you're
beautiful,
doing everything you can be doing. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the things that dental team members and dental practice owners can do in terms of creating policies, but also getting team member compliance to these policies too. Because just as up until our conversation, Steph, a few weeks ago, I had a very low care factor about it. Now I understand why it's so important. I would be less compliant previously, more compliant now. So what we need to do with team members as well to help them to really understand the risks. So first of all, from the common thing with all dental practices, the dental practice management software, and whether it's cloud-based or not. Talk about that space first of all, if you can.
When it comes to the PMS, I guess it doesn't really matter if it's on-prem or if it's online or what they're using. It's just making sure that it's looked after, monitored and locked down correctly. And just going back to basics of everyone does have their own login so things can be tracked. A really, really easy way for practices to be a lot more secure is turning on two-factor authentication for their staff. A lot of the time when things have happened and things have gone wrong, it's been because they haven't had that turned on. And it is a very easy feature to have, and make sure that our passwords are protected as best as we can. And also we spoke about this as well, Julie, about everyone having the same passwords for everything, which, look, I'm going to admit, before I started with Mercury, before I had my first session with Chris, which absolutely blew my mind when I heard everything that happens. And I came from a software background. So I was like, oh yeah, I know about cyber. That's easy. That's what I've been talking to my clients about for years. There's a whole other level, and it's really just being as aware as possible for your staff and yourself. But it's not also just protecting your business and your staff, but it's helping them be more cyber aware in their everyday lives as well, and what they're doing outside of work, perhaps with managing their internet banking or what they're doing on social media. So this information is so valuable for everybody, and really anyone who doesn't take it seriously, like, you've sort of got to ask questions, because it's in the benefit of themselves as an individual as well as the business.
That's it, because some of us are paying our tax bill with Apple iTunes accounts. So there's lessons we can all take away for our personal lives as well. So two-factor authentication in accessing the practice management software, or is there a mastered two-factor authentication to just open up the computer in the morning? Or everything comes down to everyone has a user ID for their email, for the practice management software, etc.?
The best way is for people to have really strong passwords and not have the same password for everything, and then have 2 steps to log in. And as we said, rather than everyone having the same password for everything they're logging into, there's really easy ways of managing your passwords as well. So using a password manager. All you need to remember is a really strong password to get into that password manager, which then tracks all your passwords for everything else that you're using. So we're not asking you to remember 5,000 different things, and have 2-step authentication turned on for that manager as well. Something that stuck in my head that Chris actually taught me as well is, because I, again, used to try and think of, just words to have as passwords and stuff, but think of a sentence, because then you've got a lot more characters. It's a lot harder for someone to crack. The more characters you've got, it takes a lot longer. So think of a sentence or something that makes sense to you that you're going to remember, but no one else is going to remember. Don't use your dog's name and your kids' birthdays and things like that, because unfortunately that information is very easy to find on social media.
So I could have something like, I'm a ridiculously awesome human being. Who else is going to imagine that I possibly think that way? Of course I do.
Perfect. No one's going to crack it.
And so with the practice management software and the email account for the business itself, that's security passworded, etc. What about when team members in their break time, in their lunch times, they're using the computer and the internet for their own social media and their own separate email accounts? What needs to be done there, and where are the risks around that?
It's probably a lot to do with policy, so I might kick that over to Chris for that one.
Yeah, it does depend on the business, on how they want to run that. So there is a potential risk about what sites they're going to, social, etc. However, if you were with Mercury as an example, we have a number of layers of security that we put in place anyway. So you spoke about antivirus, right? So this is basically what they refer to as endpoint security now. So it's not just antivirus, it's anti-malware, ransomware, et cetera, et cetera. There's a few things that are layered up. And it also provides monitoring. But we also then filter internet access, so we could block certain sites. So if it's known bad sites, they immediately get blocked. But you can also put policy on as well, going, for instance, that you don't allow Facebook as an example, right? Or you could go, I need my marketing team to access Facebook. No one else can. Or I will only allow Facebook between the hours of 11 and 2, which is where everybody's staggered lunches. That's it. Other sides, it's off. So there's a lot of ways of managing that and mitigating the risk. So the idea is to reduce your risk. You can't eliminate it. That's not happening. But you want to take the positive steps to try and sort that. Just one thing I do want to add about the PMS and whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. Everything that was said is exactly spot on, Steph. So the only thing I would say is I keep hearing people going, oh, it's in the cloud, so it's secure.
Even I don't think that.
Yeah, it's like I would say it's potentially more secure because, an Amazon, a Microsoft, etc., can look after their systems probably better than you can. So we got that part, but they still need to be configured correctly. And that is completely open to interpretation. So a number of large profile hacks we've seen is because of a configuration issue. So someone's done something quickly, they've done it incorrectly, and now a bunch of data is open to the public. So,
And so does that mean that if I don't want to label any particular dental software company, so I'll make up a name. I'm looking at a Stereo dental practice management software. Does that mean, is that onus on Stereo dental practice management software to make sure it's all configured correctly? Or because I'm using a reputable company name, I just assume that they've got that all sorted?
Yeah, absolutely not. And that's what I'm saying. So they look after, let's think of it as like they look after the plumbing and the kind of back end of the security, but the data itself is your responsibility. So when you move stuff to the cloud, from on-prem to cloud, it's essentially a shared responsibility model that comes into play. You are responsible for the data and how you protect it. They are responsible for the plumbing, the system underneath. So it's almost like you had a physical server like on your premises, and they've now taken that and they're looking after the server, but the data itself you need to look after. And the reason for that is they can't stop you giving the password for the admin account out to all your staff.
Yeah.
So
they haven't got control over it all. And so what do we do as dental practices to make sure that aspect of the data management is looked after? That's beyond our capabilities, I'm imagining, and we really do need to get external help like from companies like yourself to be able to look into that to see if it's configured correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. So very basically, Steph will say the same. It's just about understanding what the risks could be. Because before that, just like you said, before that, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't see it as a problem.
So there are big financial costs at play here. There are policies and procedures that we can consider and refine and implement within our own practices. How do you find team member compliance to these sort of plans? Do you have any hints around that?
I think the big thing is that just that ongoing training and awareness. And as we sort of touched on before, it is letting people know that this is going to help you in your day-to-day lives and your personal life as well as work. And I think in some of the things that you've sort of said, Julie, is there's sometimes that little bit of, generational sort of stereotypes that come with it and things. But again, talking to all different people with different businesses, some people who, much younger than me are some of the worst with all the information they put up on socials. It's like, hey, I know your whole life. I can tell you your dog's birthday. I can crack your passwords pretty quickly from all the information you put up there. So I don't think we can group people according to generational, what's going on. It is just being aware, because as Chris, when you asked me the question before about fines and things are constantly changing and evolving. I work in this space and I talk about it every single day. I still have training ongoing that I have to do compliance-wise to be able to do my job, and that Chris passes down to our whole team all the time. And once you understand it, it is so fascinating what is out there and what's happening. And just, I think getting your team, when you've got the right people around you, you've got the right team working for you, they're going to be interested in this because protecting themselves and their company and just staying up to date with it. And every time I talk to Chris, I learn something new every single time. without fail. Today, I've learned.
And I think what you're saying there, it's really kind of prompting me to think about, well, how do new team members comply with anything that you put out there in your dental practice team? Any policy, customer service, uniform, how to turn up on time, and any new team member coming in, regardless of what your policies are, will just conform with the behaviours they observe. And so that's the first thing, isn't it? Does it worry about your current stable team members, really educate each other on why we're doing this, why we've got the password protection, why we have to be worried about cybersecurity. It's not a matter of, I've got nothing to hide, patients probably don't have anything to hide either, who cares? It's not about that at all. It's about making sure that we are putting stops where we can so criminals can't have their way with our profiles and our money and all the things and other people's money. But getting your core team members to lead by example, especially when you've got a new person coming on board, because even if that new person's not fully entrenched in the idea of cybersecurity and how important it is, they will observe everyone else being so committed to those passwords and not sharing their data, their passwords with each other, etc., that they will just conform with the culture that's going on, that's being rolled out in front of them.
Yeah, exactly right.
Very, very good point. It's one of the biggest issues that we'll have is around culture. And being in dentistry, I'm sure you've seen it, where if you can't get your dentists in your principles to understand and buy in, your staff won't. It's that simple, because it is a lead by example. And this is not just a dental thing. It's very much across any industry. So you really do need, if it's a larger company, you need the board of directors bought in, understand, and it goes top down. Like, you can't lead a security culture bottom up. It doesn't work, unfortunately. It's exactly like you said. It's like it's the uniform and getting to work on time. It's all... it's behaviors that are seen and they become cultural norms. And that's what we're trying to do with cybersecurity. So just like Steph said, we roll out training all the time. So absolute minimum is kind of one training piece, probably every month. But we also consistently test our staff's ability to detect phishing email. So we send phishing simulations in at least every 2 weeks. And if you're not picking them up, we will test you every week until you get better at it. And then we do this for everyone, by the way. So we roll out this training and this phishing simulation to all the dentists we look after. So they get better and better at it.
That's great.
They get really, really good at it. And we can actually track it as well. So when we first start, we send out a phishing simulation. Most people will click on it. And you'll get what they call a fish-prone percentage, which is how many people are clicking on this thing. And we can actually see those numbers drop as we do the training over the number of months, which is awesome. So we know.
Nice. As you're making people more paranoid about everything that comes through. That's great.
Yes, I saw a good term last week, and the term is politely paranoid.
Politely paranoid. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, we've become wary of other things, don't talk to strangers in the street and all the other things. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring about that same stranger danger space into the cyber world.
Absolutely.
And so with the legality behind this, by law, businesses need to be addressing this. This is a serious thing that we're being made responsible for by authorities. Tell us more about the legality side of things.
Look, from a legal perspective, it's quite hard because it's a bit of a moving target. But again, this has been driven by those big three, Optus, Medibank, etc. Again, so essentially, we've now obviously have a cyber piece in the government that's pushing this. So the latest kind of target or goal, let's say for Australia, is to be the safest place to do business by 2030, which is a very tall order, but I like it. Claire O'Neill seems to be across it, and she's focused on privacy to start with, and then it will probably move on from there. So one of them is critical infrastructure. So that obviously doesn't affect dentists, but it's a big piece of the legislation. So what affects dentists and businesses in general, right? You will have, there's two things. So number one, we've already discussed. So that's our privacy laws and the notifiable data breach scheme, which you have to be compliant with. So there's that piece. The second piece is actually more aimed at directors. So because it kind of falls under that general being a director, and things like due diligence and stuff like that is where it's important. So like you can't, as a director, you can't knowingly trade insolvent. That kind of thing. So it's the same with the due diligence piece around cybersecurity. This is now being put on the agenda. So you would see from the Australian Institute of Company Directors just released, I say just, because I'm kind of busy with it all the time. It was November last year. They released their governance principles around cybersecurity. So that's a good place to start. You could go onto the AICD website, find it, because they publish it for free. So you've got the 5 principles, and there's red flags that they note as well under these principles. So that is a really, really good place to start with from a legislative kind of piece and being on top of it. So I'm not saying that there is specific legislation in place. There is literally just the privacy one, and then the kind of directors kind of global one. As for cybersecurity specifically, critical infrastructure would be the other one that you would have some pieces there. So I just wanted to mention cyber insurance because that is a thing. A lot of businesses have it. But what's happened is with the hacks that are taking place and the kind of focus on this is that insurance companies are getting way more rigorous, let's say, with providing you cyber insurance. So you have to meet a number of elements for them to actually even provide. So some will be uninsurable, as an example. So if you don't have endpoint security, let's say, I'm not saying this is a thing, I'm just giving an example. If you don't have endpoint security or you don't have email filtering or whatever, they may deny your cyber insurance.
Because you're too risky.
Yeah, exactly. You're too risky because they're paying out so much. What they tend to do now is they're making you have to meet a number of requirements that are really, really high. And I would say in most cases, your dentists or the people working in your practice, whether you've got a practice manager, etc., these questions are way too complicated for you to. So we field a lot of that. So I will literally get an email from a practice manager going, "Oh, we're doing a renewal. It's now gone from 6 pages last year. It's now 12 pages with loads of technical questions." So we'll fill those out for them, because what you don't want to be doing is answering it incorrectly, because then something does happen, they double check and they just deny the claim because you said you're doing staff training, and you weren't. They just will deny it. And I say that because I've seen it.
And you say it because it's true, even if you get the slightest thing wrong in your car insurance. Oh, you're not covered for that. We didn't realise your car was white and not off-white.
Yeah, exactly. And there's reasons for that. So we do help with insurance renewals and things like that. Great. And also it might be a case of your cyber insurance is too expensive.
Yeah. Excellent. We can bring down the insurance cost, I imagine, with each additional step that we have to make sure that we are being as protected as possible.
Yep.
Or being as careful as possible. If we reduce our risk down as an insurable entity, we're more likely to be able to afford the insurance.
Your premium could come down as well, depending on how you look to the insurance provider. So.
Beautiful. Excellent point. Thank you. If people were out there like I was after my initial conversation a few weeks ago with Steph thinking, crikey, this is something that's very important and urgent all of a sudden, we want to get on top of this straight away. Accessing a company like yourself, what's that journey look like? And you assist them in developing protocols and things like that as well?
Yes, Steph knows this well.
That's yes. Yeah, so definitely. So you working with finding someone who you can trust and really gets to know the ins and outs of your business. As your IT partner, it really is a partner. You know, you need someone who understands your business goals, what you're doing at the moment, where you're heading, where your gaps are, where your concerns are, and takes the time to really understand that. Get to know you, get to know your business, get to know your staff. When you first start working with someone like us, and we go down that path, we do like to do a full analysis of everything at the moment, how it's looking, what are we doing, how are we operating, what do our staff do, where are these gaps. And then sort of from there, we start working together, and over the time working together, we then also start to identify, potentially more gaps or different things that can change and things that go along the way. And what we're ultimately trying to build out there is a bit of a roadmap, a technology roadmap, a cyber roadmap for the next 12, 24, 36 months, where the business is right now, where it needs to be. And we'll look at potentially the gaps, and we can prioritize things. What's super urgent? What do we need to nip in the bud right now to make sure you're compliant, make sure your staff know what they're doing? What's something that we can potentially push back to next year or the following year? And we're working together with that business to get them where they need to go, and to guide them on that journey.
Beautiful. So what's their first best step to take to go, gotta get this all sorted out?
Call Steph. No,
That's right. Steph's number's in the show notes. We're not protecting your privacy at all.
No, just publish that one.
I guess just acknowledging that someone's ready to take that first step is amazing. Like that's great. That's music to my ears, because like you said, a lot of people don't know what they don't know. So that first step in finding someone, and we, as we said, we work with over I think 600 to 800 dental users or something across Australia. So someone who understands
that's a lot.
Your business and your practice, and just start having the conversation. You'll know if someone has what they are going to give your business what they need to give you. A key thing when you're looking for someone in IT, particularly in the dental industry, is they've got experience in the dental industry. Do they really understand your hardware, your platform, your goals? Because dental and medical is quite unique in what they offer. Anyone in IT, could potentially look after you, but they're not going to understand your business. So someone who really understands dental is really key. The other component that's really key is someone who has that dedicated cybersecurity, like we're very lucky to have with Chris and his team. Again, there's lots of other providers out there that say they do cyber, which is true, that they will do some element of cyber. But what that really is, and if it's got that, is it just putting something on your computer rather than doing all the training, all the different layers that Chris has spoken about, which you really need, particularly with the sort of data that dentists are holding with that personal information. So yeah, those key things. Do they understand dental? Do they understand your space? And have they got a true cybersecurity team in-house that can look after you properly?
I love it. So the benefits are enormous. When we go through the benefits of, we become aware personally, and all the individuals in our teams, all of a sudden we become much more aware of cybersecurity, how they can hack into our profiles and do crime. And so we can make ourselves more safe, not just the businesses that we work in. All of a sudden, we are meeting our expectation, a professional expectation, to be doing all we can to make sure that patients' privacy is being protected, but also that we are protecting the information and it's not going out into unsafe hands. If a patient ever was to ask us, and people are becoming more aware of this stuff all the time, what do you do to make sure my information is not being made available to criminals? You've actually got an answer, hopefully on a piece of paper that you can hand them to. This is our policy. This is what we adhere to. We are also making sure that we're avoiding big fines, possible fines that are so high that they will actually shut us down as well. The benefits are absolutely there. And as a dental practice previous owner, worked in the industry for a long, long time, and as a consultant, you can be in that space where, oh my God, another area to be compliant in. This is all just getting too hard. But they always use the analogy of, you do put a lock on the front of your practice door before you leave the night, don't you? You don't just leave the front door wide open. We are leaving front doors wide open if we're not managing this side of things effectively enough. And so it is something where the costs can be absolutely enormous. And so doing what we can just to make sure, we're going to embrace this is another aspect of our practice that we need to manage very, very well. I really appreciate both of you coming on and educating us. And Steph, our enlightening discussion a few weeks ago has made me start talking about this much more with dental practice teams, which is a good thing since I'm a consultant. But I encourage our clients and our listeners to get onto mercuryit.com.au and reach out and get the assistance. Have this big thing ticked off your list. We've now got it managed. We can relax now, continue functioning as normal, and know that we've ticked this very important thing off the security list. So thank you both very, very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Julie. It's been amazing talking to you again. So thank you.
My pleasure. And as I say, everyone out there, jump onto mercuryit.com.au, get it all sorted, and then just get on with your beautiful, happy days moving forward. If you enjoyed today's podcast, then you should come along and join the club. The club is a whole library of lunch and learns, with new lunch and learns being produced all the time that help your dental team gain greater success in your systems, in your team behaviours, in your patient management, in your patient engagement, in their treatment plans. They are usually around half an hour in length, and so team members can sit down, be paid for their lunch break, eat lunch while they're being inspired, and delivered all of these insights and strategies that can be implemented so you all achieve greater levels of success. Also, Amina and I, my buddy from Dental Management Expertise, have a company, Dental Business Mastery, together. And our flagship online 1-year course for dental practice managers and dental practice owners to learn how to very successfully manage your dental practice is available. Head over to dentalbusinessmastery.com.au to find out more information, and has information about any other courses that we've got available. Also, make sure you do jump onto my website, julieparkerpracticesuccess.com.au, and you will see a whole load of free information. There are articles, the blog, downloads, templates, a whole load of things that are designed to help you overcome any specific challenge that you've got going on in your practice at the moment. If you have any suggestions of topics or guests that I can have on the podcast, please let me know. Thanks for listening.